All right, I'd like to introduce the speaker of the day. Jeff McIntyre joined the chapel April 15, 2018 as an inactive chapel member and supporter. He is retired military. Thank you for your service, Jeff. Former IT director of the Bionetics Corporation, former business owner and substance abuse counselor. He is currently employed at the Master Center for Addiction Medicine, working primarily with people addicted to heroin and other opioids. He is married to Pam McIntyre, also a chapel member, retired English teacher, and they have 2 adult children. Russell, who is a business consultant for Deloitte, and Emma, who currently works as a solutions engineer for Oracle Corporation. Jeff perceives his life's purpose to be inspiring and raising an expansion of human consciousness and the elimination of unnecessary human suffering. Jeff believes that freedom is the best and surest path for human advancement, and he states, freedom is a manifestation of the highest levels of consciousness. Dependency is a manifestation of the lowest levels of consciousness. It is my pleasure to introduce on Zoom, Jeff McIntyre.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be here. Today, my teaching is called Truth, Life, and Death. And I will acknowledge that I will be talking about death and how we relate to it. Death can be a very emotional event, especially for those of us who, like Pam and I do, actually have a loved one who's approaching the end of their life. And that's kind of what kind of triggered this teaching. So I'm going to begin by talking about truth. Okay, and I felt I need to do this because in our society today we actually have a philosophy that basically states that there is no empirical truth. I'll begin by saying there is such thing as truth. I kind of look at it as like honesty. It kind of exists at 3 levels, the physical, the emotional, and the spiritual levels. Truth or something being true, according to the dictionary, is being in accordance with fact or reality. Okay, and I'll begin just stating that there is a physical reality. Physical reality existed before human beings did, and before language. We were born into it. So to deny it, which I often do, is kind of a losing battle. There was a guy named Diogenes in Greek mythology that he spent his life searching for an honest man, and a lot of times my search for truth, okay, I've identified that more often than not, I can't find truth because I'm not honest in that area of my life. Although sometimes it's just ignorance, which is not a character defect, by the way. We are all ignorant in some way or another. Hopefully we get less so as we move along our path. So our relationship with truth, and I'm not gonna dwell on truth for very long, by the way, because you can get lost in it. I'll just say that emotional truth is acknowledging and feeling and acting on our emotions as they happen in an appropriate way. A lot of times we don't express our emotions because of social constrictions or because we don't want to harm somebody else or whatever, but we end up stuffing our emotions, and then they sort of come out sideways. They come out in compulsive thinking or addictions or just building up small resentments until we reach critical mass and then nuking whoever's with us. Living in emotional honesty, and emotions are kind of a tool to deal with physical reality and relationships and that kind of thing. I'm not going to talk too much about emotional reality or emotional truth either, because even though it's pretty simple, talking about it becomes very complicated very quickly. But what I'm talking about when I'm talking about emotional reality is that the emotions that we're feeling are associated with what's happening in the moment that we're in, not from the past or some projection, anxiety from projecting into the future. That emotional reality is living right now. Right? Another just a little thing about truth, and I'm not even really going to talk much about the spiritual levels of truth, but we discover the spiritual levels of truth through a direct spiritual experience. And for me, that has happened through meditation, study, service, and actually dream work with our dreams. And that will change, obviously recognizing, because it's through those direct spiritual experiences that we recognize who and what we truly are as perfectly created spiritual beings. And that's what I'm going to call, for the purposes of this teaching, spiritual truth. Okay. One thing, because my human ego loves to think that whatever I think right now is the truth. There's a line from The Prophet by Keel Gibran that says, the prophet is talking to the people, and he says, when you find a truth, don't say that you found the truth. Say that you found a truth. Okay? So just sort of keep that in mind. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to life. And I'm mostly going to be talking about human life. And I'm going to begin by saying life is the will of God. Human life is the dipping down of consciousness into the physical realm. Humans are the physical extension of our authentic spiritual selves. So what we do, we were spirit before we entered this body. We are spirit now, and we will be spirit after we leave this body. Okay, that's what I'm talking about when I say dipping down into the consciousness of the physical realm, and experiencing the physical realm like it's real. The Hindus call this Maya, which is the illusion that the physical realm is real, the physical life is real. So we dip down into the physical realm, we experience the life of a human being, and then we release our bodies and go back to spiritual consciousness, purely spiritual consciousness. Okay? Life, birth, is a forgetting and a going to sleep. We begin to identify and attach our sense of self to our bodies and our personalities. We begin from this contracted state and begin to expand our human consciousness. This is the consciousness that we acquire by being a human being, okay, in the physical realm. And in the beginning, as when we were babies, it is pretty much completely physical, okay? Our physical needs dominate our consciousness. And we establish that human consciousness of Jeff McIntyre separate from all the other people around me. Okay? And that's why I say this is a constricted state of consciousness. And we begin to expand our human consciousness until, hopefully, in this lifetime or some other, we are able to become fully aware of our true nature as spiritual beings, becoming fully human and fully spiritual simultaneously. And we live from that. And the way I've experienced this is that as a self-centered human being, okay, and all human beings are self-centered when they're young, okay, if we mature normally, we become less and less self-centered as we grow. But to a self-centered human being, which I stayed in much longer than I should have, life seems to us that it's being imposed from the outside. Okay, it's events coming, sometimes we call this living life on life's terms, in other words, we have to deal with whatever comes our way. And this is the way life seems to a self-centered person. As we become more expansive in our awareness, and my experience of spiritual growth has always been from a self-centered, self-conscious, selfish mentality to a more expansive, inclusive, unified consciousness. So as we move from the self-centered consciousness to an expansive consciousness, our experience of life changes. And at some point, at least it happened to me, and I've heard other people who meditate seriously who have had this similar experience, we become quiet enough in meditation where we actually perceive how our mind, along with all other minds, is literally creating our life. Okay? And once we have this realization, life no longer seems like something that's being imposed on us. It now flows outward from us in a creative torrent. So now, and then a shift begins to happen. Okay, who and what we identify with changes. Okay, and let me talk a little bit about identity. Okay, because I'm going to be talking about it at the end here, and it's important. Okay, identities can become very important to us in our human lives. And we all have numerous identities. I'm 68 years old. I've probably had 1,000 different identities. Who knows how many? Identities can be ethnic, gender, professional, IDs based on accomplishment, degrees, award. I'm a Super Bowl champion, or I'm a total failure. A lot of times the conflicts that we have in our lives are us defending our identities or other people identifying their identities. A human identity often governs who we accept and who we reject, who we'll talk to and who we'll ignore, who we love and who we hate. So identity, can be important within our human life. Now, if we wish to dwell in spiritual consciousness, then identifying with anything temporary is a mistake. We can acknowledge physical truth, reality, right? But it is temporary and spirit is eternal. And this is important, okay? Because death is the release of the body. Okay? We leave the duality of physical life, that higher and lower mind. Maybe we've experienced as a trifold life of body, mind, and spirit. In this transition, as we move from being self-centered to being more spiritually conscious and expansive, our identity begins to shift. Okay? And I want to kind of pause for a second and kind of convey some experiences, or one experience at least, that have kind of they've kind of influenced my perception, my experience, and kind of my attitude towards death. Okay. And probably the primary one was when I was 19 years old. My parents were away on vacation, and they asked me to stay with my grandmother in their house. My grandmother lived with us, but they asked me to stay, close to home and with my grandmother, who was 93 years old at the time, at home with her. It was just me and her in the house. But anyway, we had lots of conversations those 2 weeks. Really kind of reviewing her life. And she had an extraordinary life. I mean, she was born in 1883. She lived through a couple of depressions, several world wars, et cetera. She'd really, she'd gone from when she was born, it was all like kerosene lamps and horse and buggies, and by the time she died, we had landed people on the moon. A pretty amazing life she'd had. And she actually said to me, Jeff, I've had a wonderful life, but I'm tired and it's time for me to go. And within 2 days, she was dead. And that may seem tragic, but to me, it was not. You know, I literally saw at 19 years old, I didn't really understand what I was seeing the way I do now. But I saw that this was something amazing. You know, here was this conscious human being deciding to go on, to move on. And even to me at 19 years old, in my limited awareness of a 19-year-old, I knew this was an extraordinary thing. And I felt the privilege of being here, you know, being with her during that decision and during her passing. So that was one of the experiences. I've had a bunch. I'm not going to try to go through them all because I have limited time. But that changed my attitude towards death. That this is something we can do consciously, you know. And so that experience helped me. The other thing is how dependent we are on identity. Okay. The main principle here is if we identify with our body and our personality, if that is what we are, then death, personal death, will be tragic because we're losing everything. We're losing everything that we are, not just everything that we have. So it becomes a huge personal loss. If we identify with the soul, with that eternal spirit, then we are simply stepping through the veil into the light. That's all I got. Thank you.